Hello and welcome. I'm Peter, and we're here to make progress, not perfection. But on that way to progress, we find ourselves struggling to get to the next level. So here today, I'm going to give you the top 5 mistakes that are made in the yellow ranks. Now, there are still a lot of the same repeated mistakes in the yellow ranks that I covered previously in my top 5 green rank mistakes and the top 5 teal rank mistakes. And you can find that video up here. And I'm also going to link it down in the comments below. But the same mistakes are still happening, things such as not punishing hop kicks, not using characters' key moves, and players not being ready to convert off of counter hits, etc, etc. All these points I've already made. Long story short, the mistakes are still happening, but I didn't want to make another video detailing the same mistakes over and over. So today we're going to look at some new mistakes. Counting down from number 5, we have not respecting opponents' wake-up options. Now, wake-up attacks such as wake-up lows, wake-up mid-kicks, and spring kicks are heavily abused by yellow rank players and below. And as a result of this, players should be cautious when approaching their opponents when there's a knockdown situation. In almost all the replays that I've watched from the viewers, there was little to no respect for grounded opponents. This is probably because many of you, when you score a knockdown, you're thinking, all right, I got a knockdown. It's my turn. It's my time to pressure. And then, whoops, wake up attack. I think most players just don't understand that Tekken grants a lot of defensive options to grounded opponents. So my biggest advice on this is just be cautious when approaching a player when there is a knockdown situation, unless you absolutely have the correct read based on the Oki. Some players will say, well, I just low parry my opponent every single time because in case they do the low kick, then I can parry them and launch them for it. Well, what if they do the wake up mid kick? Getting hit by this mid kick deals damage and puts you at -5 on hit. And this is not a great option to be trying to gamble for if you're in a low life situation. The best way to actually deal with opponents who are wake up happy is to bait out the attack by running in and then dashing out to force a whiff. If the opponent gets up normally, then you can still pressure them when you see them get on the ground, and then if they whiff something, you can whiff punish them for it. Number 4, we have players pressing buttons on hit. What? Peter, this can't be right. This is a teal or green level mistake. This can't possibly be in the top yellow mistakes, can it? First and foremost, let's get the elephant out of the room. This mistake I did not see at all in the teal rank videos, and for the most part, I did not see this in the green rank videos that were submitted to me. I thought this would for sure be a teal rank / green rank mistake, but it wasn't. However, for whatever reason, it seems between the jump from green ranks to yellow ranks, players decided to start pressing buttons on hit. This took me a while to think about what could possibly be the reason, and I finally have a theory. See, in the teal and green ranks, players are still fairly new to the game, and they're kind of afraid to press buttons when they're hit by their opponent. But I guess from playing more and more games, players acquiring more and more experience, they got more and more ballsy. Their balls just basically grew bigger and bigger, and they became more comfortable with the game. So naturally, as players get more and more comfortable with the game, they start pressing more and more buttons. And they think, you know what, I'm gonna challenge the opponent here. I can press a button here. Wrong. Sorry for the rude awakening, but you don't have enough knowledge right now to be challenging the opponent on hit. I'm not saying every single player out there doesn't understand when to challenge, but for the most part, you guys don't have enough knowledge. And I'm not trying to single out any given player, but I'm going to use EK here as an example. Here we get hit by wedge driver and we go for a panic hop kick. Luckily, our opponent doesn't convert off of this, and a few rounds later, this happens again. We get hit by wedge driver, and then we're pressing buttons again. This time, we get counter hit launched with back 1. For those of you who didn't know, wedge driver is plus 14 on hit. Yeah, there is no world where you challenge this attack because almost anything you do will get beat out and grant Brian a counter hit. Just as a golden rule for now, if you get hit, stop pressing buttons. Pressing buttons on hit is the easiest way to lose a game because it almost certainly will grant your opponent a counter hit opportunity, since more often than not you will be at minus frames on hit. Number 3, and making a surprise return from the green ranks, is whiffing, and more whiffing. And I'm not talking about slight misjudgments in spacing, but rather hugely misplaced attacks. I totally understand this kind of stuff will happen since both players are moving around on the screen. You're trying to find the ideal range for your attack, your opponent's trying to find the ideal range to get out of those attacks. Because of this, whiffs will naturally happen, and there's no two ways around this. However, what I suggested in the green ranks videos still apply here. Try to be closer to your opponent than you think. One technique for doing this, which will help you out, is keeping tabs on what attacks and where you whiffed it. If you happen to whiff once, whether you were punished or not, it doesn't matter. Make a mental note of roughly how close you were to the opponent before the attack whiffed. The next time you throw out that same attack, try to make up the distance where you whiffed, right? Over time, this will help you gauge the distance between yourself and the opponent, and it will also teach you to account for factors such as opponents backdashing away from your attacks. The number 2 mistake is not whiff punishing, and this goes hand in hand with mistake number 3. Since players in the yellow rank are still whiffing quite a bit, I urge each and every one of you guys who are watching out there to really capitalize on this. An opponent's mistake in terms of whiffing is going to be your best friend. And as I've already made it clear, players in the yellow ranks really struggle to judge distance. And if that's the case, then a little backdash can go a long way. I've watched all of the games, and most players here, when they see a whiff, simply just do a love tap with a jab, or punish with some weird option like a magic 4 or something that's not really a whiff punisher. Either way, whiff punishing is definitely a skill you want to develop in these ranks, as it can carry you quite far, very, very far, and will continue to be a skill that gets refined and fine-tuned over time as it gets used more and more. It will always be valuable. My biggest advice on this matter is whenever you backdash or hold back to block, you should be looking at your opponent and observing what they do. When you backdash, you should be on alert mode, checking each and every time you do to see if there's a whiff. Backdash, check if there's a whiff. Backdash, check to see if there was a whiff. Backdash, check to see if there was a whiff. Every time you backdash, you should be making a quick mental check to see if there was a whiff. And coming in at number 1, the number 1 mistake made in the yellow ranks is playing 2D Tekken. What do I mean by this? Well, for the most part, in the yellow ranks, players are not sidestepping, or rather, not sidestepping enough, and sometimes not at all, right? Whether it's being in a bad position with their backs against the walls, or being aggressively poked down by the opponent, or even aggressing on the opponent. Bottom line is players are pretty much just moving backwards and forwards and backwards with no lateral movement whatsoever. Now, I've already made a video on how and when to sidestep, which you can find in the upper right hand corner over there. But I'll quickly go over a few key points on sidestepping. First off, if your back is against the wall, this is a prime time to start sidestepping and getting the fuck away from that wall. Let's take a look at an example. Here we have EK and he's facing down this Brian player. We're getting pressured and dangerously close to the wall. What we need to be doing here is sidestepping and sidewalking like a madman right here. We need to be sidestepping right here. If we were to sidestep to the right, we would have a little bit more room to play with, so our back is not directly against the wall and we wouldn't have to eat all this pressure that we're currently facing down right now at the wall. Now let's take a look on how we can potentially utilize sidestepping to create some offense. First clip is our viewer, a Loki Chloe player. Here in this sequence, we do a down forward 1 into some attack, and our opponent immediately interrupts us from that attack with 1-2-4. Again, this happens once more after we do a down forward 1 and our opponent tries for an attack, but this time we use the low and go under that attack. This is smart. By now, we should have noticed that our opponent is most likely going to retaliate every single time we do a down forward 1 on block. So again, once more, we go for a down forward 1, and our opponent, lo and behold, retaliates immediately, this time with 2-2-3 with Lee. Now, I think you guys get the idea of what's happening here. Of course, we have to adapt to this, so in later games, we more or less do with a sequence like down forward 1 into down forward 1. However, what can happen here is that we can still get jabbed in between our down forward 1 attempts. Even if we were to go for an option like down forward 1 into jab, we would still lose to a jab check from the opponent. And this, my friend, is where weaving in sidesteps comes into play. If we go for a down forward 1 into sidestep into down forward 1, we can beat options like a plain jab, 1-2-4 from Lee, and 2-2-3 from Lee, which were all the options that our opponents were throwing out at us, right? And this is just one of the reasons why sidestepping is so incredibly important. Don't feel that you have to go for an immediate option after throwing out a down forward 1 on block. You don't. You can do down forward 1, sidestep, jab. Down forward 1, sidestep, nothing, right? There are a lot of different options. While in normal situations where our options could just be to jab check our opponent, try adding in sidesteps to add another layer of depth to your game plan and simultaneously grant yourself a little bit of evasion along the way. Alright everybody, so that about does it for the top 5 mistakes made in the yellow ranks. Thank you everyone once again for submitting your footage. I had a lot of fun watching your games and sitting through and trying to figure out what you guys were struggling with. Up next, top 5 mistakes made in the orange ranks. Thanks for watching guys and joining me on this video. Also, thank you so much patrons for your ever so gracious support. Without you, this would have not been possible. And if you're new here and you like what you see, consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification icon. Below in the descriptions as always, I also have my links to my Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon page. See ya next time.